Being unshakable is when life strikes and finds no one there to hit. What shakes you is not life. It is the ego's attachment to continuing to exist. The moment you feel the need to defend yourself, you are already defeated. Nothing has power over you except the false identity you insist on protecting. The ego calls reaction strength, but it is only fear in disguise. The soul is unshakable because it does not try to control anything. What is real does not react. It observes while the false collapses. Being unshakable is not strength. It is the death of your need to be protected. You say you want stability, yet you panic when you lose control, when you are not seen, when life does not obey you. Be honest. What breaks you is not the world, but the addiction to needing it to confirm who you think you are. And this is where Sufism enters like a blade. Rumi did not speak to comfort you. He spoke to destroy the false center from which all fear is born. A direct question, no escape. If you were truly whole, why would anything still have the power to knock you down? If you stay until the end, you will discover why nothing can shake someone who no longer tries to defend themselves, and why the ego fears so deeply what Rumi called absolute surrender. You want to be unshakable, yet you live defending yourself. That already exposes you. What is whole does not protect itself. What is real does not need to prove anything. What protects itself is always a fragile image, a character trained to survive. In Sufism, this is the nafs, the psychological self that demands control, recognition, and security. It is not an external enemy. It is you when you react. As long as this self is alive, every situation becomes a threat. You call this sensitivity, intensity, awareness. It is a lie. It is attachment. Rumi pointed to something that humiliates the ego because it is too simple. The soul does not suffer. The soul does not fluctuate. The soul does not collapse. What suffers is the identity you defend tooth and nail. Every time something hits you, observe the immediate reflex. Justify, accuse, blame, explain, control. This movement is the ego asking for oxygen, and you give it. Then you ask why you fall. You fall because you identify. You glue your name onto what happens and call it my life. Right now in the comments, I stop reacting. And if you feel that this kind of truth wakes you up, become a member of the channel. Here the ego is not welcomed. Here it is cornered. Sufism does not teach you to become strong. It teaches you to become empty. Empty of reaction, empty of drama, empty of narrative. And here comes the shock the ego hates. Emptiness is not weakness. Emptiness is invulnerability. Nothing shakes you when it finds no one inside to be shaken. Life strikes. The impact arrives. The pain passes. What does not happen is the story. Without a story, there is no fall. You believe you need to understand this? Wrong. Understanding is just another attempt at control. The nafs loves theory because theory keeps everything in the head. Rumi pointed to raw experience. When something hurts you, do nothing inside. Do not talk to yourself. Do not defend yourself. Do not explain. Stay, feel, breathe, observe. This absence of reaction is living Sufism. Fire only burns those who enter it with identity. Without identity, fire becomes warmth and passes. See how this threatens your ego right now. It wants to turn this into a method, a step-by-step, something safe. There is no safety here. There is surrender. And surrender is not giving up on life. It is giving up trying to control life in order to feel like someone. Rumi spoke of dissolution because he knew, as long as there is someone trying to be unshakable, there will be something capable of shaking them. Being unshakable is not needing to win any situation. It is not negotiating with fear. It is not asking the future for guarantees. Emotions arise, thoughts appear, losses happen. The brutal difference is this: you do not enter. You do not react. You do not become them. The ego starves when it does not receive attention. The soul appears when the noise ends. Now face the truth without makeup. You are not afraid of suffering. You are afraid of disappearing. And that is exactly what would set you free. Sufism does not promise comfort. It promises reality. And reality does not need you defending yourself all the time. If this bothers you, good. It means something false is being pressed. And the question that remains open, without easy relief, is this: what remains of you if, at the next impact, you do not react, do not explain, do not protect yourself? You simply stay present until the ego has nowhere left to hide. You still think the problem is what happens to you. That is the central illusion. As long as you keep pointing outward, you remain weak inwardly. Sufism cuts this mercilessly. What destroys you is not loss but attachment, not rejection but identity, not chaos but your need for order in order to feel like someone. Every time something destabilizes you, the real question is not, why did this happen, but what in me needed this in order to exist? The ego lives on friction. Without friction, it disappears. And you call its disappearance emptiness, when in truth, it is clarity. You confuse being unshakable with resistance. Resistance is tension. Tension exhausts. It exhausts because it requires continuous effort to sustain an image. Sufism does not ask for effort, it asks for renunciation, renouncing reaction, renouncing explanation, renouncing winning against life. Notice how this irritates your mind right now. It wants action, control, movement. But non-action is the most violent blow against the ego. When you do not react, it has nothing to lean on. Without support, it collapses. Notice how important you feel when you suffer. There is a hidden pleasure in it. Drama gives you identity. Pain gives you a story. The ego loves to say, "Look at what I went through." Rumi crushed this with silence. Because where there is silence, there is no stage. Where there is no stage, there is no character. And without a character, there is no one to be shaken. This is not pretty poetry. It is internal engineering. It is simple spiritual mathematics. Reaction creates identity. Identity creates suffering. You were trained to respond to everything, to opine, justify, defend, position yourself. They called this maturity. Sufism calls it prison. Every response reinforces the false self. Every justification thickens the wall that separates you from the soul. Being unshakable is stopping automatic response. It is interrupting the reflex. It is creating an interval between impact and reaction. In that interval, the ego loses control. In that interval, something real appears. You fear that interval because there you do not know who you are. Good. That not knowing is the doorway. As long as you know who you are someone limited. Sufism does not want to give you a better identity. It wants to remove your need for identity. That is why the ego calls it dangerous. Because it is. Dangerous to it. Liberating for you. Observe the body when something hits you. The tightness in the chest, the shallow breath, the rush to think. This is the ego entering survival mode. Do not fight it. Fighting is still reaction. Simply stay. Let the body feel. Let the mind scream without obeying it. This is crucial. Do not obey. The ego only exists when it is obeyed. When it is not, it talks to itself until it gets tired. You always wanted peace as a reward, something that comes after you get it right, improve, heal. Sufism turns this inside out. Peace appears when you stop trying to reach it. Seeking is the noise. Renunciation is the silence. And silence is not absence of life. It is absence of inner noise. That is where you become unshakable. Not because nothing happens, but because nothing drags you along. Notice how you define yourself by what you feel. I am bad, I'm confused, I'm lost. Who is this I? In Sufism, this is seen as misappropriation. Emotions pass, thoughts pass, situations pass. The ego appropriates them and says, "This is me." The soul appropriates nothing. It observes. And what observes does not oscillate with what is observed. You want a technique to shield yourself. There is none. Any technique becomes armor, and armor exhausts. Sufism does not shield you, it empties you. And here is the truth that confronts you. Only those who have something to protect need shielding. When there is nothing to protect, there is no threat. This is not indifference. It is raw freedom. See how your mind tries to spiritualize the ego. Learning, evolving, becoming better. All of this can become disguise. Rumi was ruthless with that. He spoke of dying before dying. Dying to the idea of self. As long as you are trying to become something, you are still trapped in the character. Being unshakable is not becoming strong, it is stopping the attempt to be someone. The ego negotiates. It says, "Fine, I'll stop reacting, but give me security." Sufism does not negotiate. It cuts. Either you react or you see. You cannot do both. Seeing is naked presence. Reacting is ego. Every time you choose to see, something old loses strength. Every time you react, the old strengthens. You think you need ideal conditions to practice this? You don't. Difficult conditions are the field. Sufism was not created for calm moments. It was forged in the friction of real life. It is in conflict, in loss, in contempt, in chaos that non-reaction turns into gold. If you're only present when everything is fine, you have understood nothing. Notice how you feel when you don't react. A strange emptiness appears. An uncomfortable silence. The ego calls this apathy, coldness, giving up. It's a lie. This is the space where the soul breathes. The discomfort is the ego losing control. If you cross that discomfort without escaping, something reorganizes inside you. You always thought you needed to protect yourself from people. Sufism shows something harsher. You need to stop protecting yourself from sensations. Sensations do not kill. What kills is the story you create about them. When sensation comes and you don't create a story, it passes like a wave. Without story, there is no trauma. Without trauma, there is no shaking. Notice how you try to be understood. This too is ego. The desire to be understood is the desire to exist in another's mind. Rumi pointed to something more radical. Existing without a witness. When you don't need to be seen, nothing can hit you through the gaze. Opinion loses its teeth. Judgment loses its poison. You want guarantees. You want to know if this works. The ego always asks for proof before letting go of control, but proof only comes after surrender. This is the paradox the mind hates. You only discover you don't fall when you stop trying to hold yourself. As long as you hold on, you are still afraid. Notice how you prepare for the worst. You plan responses, imagine scenarios, rehearse defenses. This looks like prudence, but it is organized fear. Sufism calls this living in the future. And in the future, the ego reigns. Being unshakable is living in the now, where there is no time for drama. In the now, there is only sensation and presence. You are conditioned to believe you need to solve everything. Solving is control. Not everything asks for a solution. Some things ask for silence. When you try to solve what only needs to be felt, you create inner conflict. Sufism teaches the difference. This difference makes you dangerous to the ego because you stop feeding it with urgency. See how the ego feels diminished when you don't react? It feels useless, ridiculous, invisible, exactly as it should. The ego only rules while you believe you need it. When you see that it is merely a conditioned reflex, it loses the crown. The soul does not take its place. It was always there. You want to reach a final state, a point where nothing affects you anymore. This is another ego fantasy. Sufism does not promise an end. It points to a way of crossing through, crossing without carrying, feeling without sticking, living without defining yourself. This is how unshakability manifests, not as rigidity, but as absolute fluidity. And now, while you feel this silent tightness inside, the question that gives you no rest remains open, without a comfortable answer, spinning like a portal. At the next real impact of your life, will you react to continue existing as before? Or will you stay present enough to let the ego once again find no one inside to cling to? You still try to use this to feel special? Do you see it? Even now, the ego whispers that you are understanding something deep, that you are ahead, that this differentiates you. That is its last trick. Sufism does not make you special, it makes you nobody. And that is exactly where true unshakability begins. As long as you want to be someone who knows, you remain vulnerable, because anything that is someone can be attacked, questioned, diminished, destroyed. You were taught to strengthen yourself by creating a better identity, more conscious, more spiritual, more evolved. This is just the ego changing clothes. Rumi did not speak of improvement, he spoke of dissolution. Sugar does not become sweeter by trying to be salt, it dissolves in water. The ego does not become calmer by trying to be spiritual, it dissolves when it is not fed. And you feel fear because you confuse disappearing with dying. Notice how you feel the need to position yourself in everything, to have an opinion, a side, an answer. Sufism does not ask for moral neutrality, it asks for inner freedom. When you don't position yourself by reflex, you act from clarity, and clarity does not shout. It does not explain itself, it simply is. This enrages the ego because without noise it cannot draw attention. You think, you react because you care. Often, you react because you want to exist. Conflict gives you shape. Anger gives you contour. Defense gives you identity. When that falls away, an emptiness arises that the ego calls loss of meaning. Sufism calls it return. Return to what observes without needing drama to feel alive. Notice how you try to take this into the future. Next time I'll react less. That is still control. The practice is now. Always now. The impact has already arrived. The emotion is already here. The choice is immediate. Obey or observe. There is no middle ground. Every time you observe, something in you weakens. Every time you obey, the ego fattens. You want to protect yourself from pain. Sufism does not protect you from pain. It protects you from slavery to pain. Pain that is felt passes. Pain that is resisted becomes identity. Most people do not suffer because they feel. They suffer because they hold on. They hold on to the story, the injustice, the it shouldn't be like this. And they call this trauma. Trauma is the refusal to let go. See how you measure your value by the impact things have on you. This destroyed me. This marked me. The ego loves intensity because intensity validates its existence. Sufism goes in the opposite direction. Intensity without attachment, feeling everything without becoming anything. That is what makes you unshakable. Not the absence of impact, but the absence of appropriation. You were conditioned to believe you need to assert yourself so you won't be swallowed. Rumi showed the opposite. What asserts itself hardens, what surrenders passes through. Water does not confront the stone. It flows, and in time, it wins. The ego wants confrontation, the soul prefers flow. That is why the ego breaks and the soul does not. Notice how you identify with your wounds. They become part of your story. You carry them like invisible medals. Sufism cuts this mercilessly. A wound that is felt heals. A wound that is narrated stays open. Every time you tell the same story, you reopen the cut. The ego lives on that. The soul does not need to remember to exist. You try to be understood even by yourself. You want to understand why you feel, why you react, why it hurts. Understanding becomes a labyrinth. Rumi pointed to something simpler: seeing. Seeing without explaining. Seeing without justifying. Seeing without concluding. This leaves the ego without ground because it only exists in interpretation. You believe you need to get rid of the ego. That is another trap. Whoever wants to get rid of something is still at war. Sufism does not wage inner war, it withdraws nourishment. The ego speaks, you don't obey. It complains, you don't react. It threatens, you stay. Without an enemy, it loses its function. Notice how you prepare yourself to be attacked. Even in silence, you arm yourself. This is exhausting. Sufism returns a brutal trust. Nothing needs to be defended. What is real cannot be wounded. What can be wounded was never you. As long as you confuse the two, you live in constant alert. You always thought you needed to protect yourself to survive. Sufism shows something more radical. You survive better when you stop protecting yourself. Because protection creates continuous fear, the absence of protection creates presence, and presence does not negotiate with threat. Notice how you want results. You want to feel something different, you want a state, you want confirmation. The ego always demands proof. Sufi practice does not deliver proof, it delivers raw experience. Stay without reacting long enough and see what remains. What remains does not oscillate. You confuse silence with repression. Repression is holding. Silence is not responding. They are opposites. When you don't respond, nothing gets trapped. When you hold, everything ferments. The ego prefers repression because it maintains tension. The soul prefers silence because it dissolves. Observe the exact moment when reaction is born. It is fast, almost automatic. That is where the practice happens. Not later, not tomorrow, now. That point is microscopic but powerful. When you see that instant and don't enter it, something in you changes axis. You don't need to believe any of this. Sufism does not ask for belief, it asks for honesty. Honesty to see that every fall is born of identification. Honesty to see that every peace is born of non-reaction. It is not mystical, it is direct. It is cruel to the ego because it is too simple. If something in you felt exposed, threatened, or uncomfortable, that is not a mistake. It is a sign of precision. The ego always reacts when it is seen without its mask. True unshakability is not born from strength, control, or mental preparation, but from the end of automatic reaction, the end of the need to defend yourself, the end of the lie that you must defeat life in order to be whole. Rumi pointed to this silent point where nothing needs to be protected because nothing false governs anymore. And when this point appears, the world may tremble. You will not. If this video moved through you, subscribe to the channel to continue this direct confrontation with the ego, become a member to access content that is not made to please, but to liberate, and leave your comment with the phrase that echoed in you. This anchors the teaching in the body, not only in the mind. The next video goes deeper, exactly where the ego truly begins to die, and where most people flee.